Hello. Hi, guys. Welcome to our latest In Goop Health digital session. I am Megan O'Neill. I'm the senior beauty editor at Goop, as well as the co-host of The Beauty Closet, Goop's Clean Beauty podcast. And welcome to my bedroom in Brooklyn. This is so weird, but also pretty cool. We must have people from New York tuning in, I imagine. But it's been pretty incredible. We've had people from all over watching these. And just know that wherever you are, we are sending you so much love. This has been a really difficult time. It's been a really heartbreaking time. But we're doing things to help us all get through. We sent out a dedicated email on Monday, dedicated to Black Lives Matter, and it has an amazing list of resources on how to listen, where to donate, how to help be a part of the change. And if you missed that email, you can still check out all the resources and our letter on goop.com. And we've been having these sessions every week, bringing you some of our favorite thought leaders and healers and experts to create a sense of community. And I get so much out of that because I'm really missing daily interactions and powwowing with people at the office and even just seeing people on my commute every morning. So these sessions have really helped me feel connected and helped foster that sense of community that we're missing right now. We've had some incredible people in the past few weeks. We had Ambi Kavanaugh. She gave this incredible sound bath that I've listened to twice since it aired. We've had talks with intuitive Dana Childs, a special workout with Kinergy, and a bunch of other sessions to help ground and connect us all. And if you've missed anything, everything is on our YouTube page. And these sessions are all free, which I love. And if you're able and would like to make a donation, we are raising money for NAACP Legal Defense, which is an organization that fights for racial justice through litigation and advocacy and public education. And there's a donate button somewhere up top there. Okay, let's get to our speaker today. I am so excited to introduce Erica Chidi. Erica is the CEO and founder of LOOM, a well-being brand empowering women through sexual and reproductive health. She's dedicated her life to helping people cultivate body literacy and giving them the tools to advocate for their health and well-being. Through her book, Nurture, and her work as both a doula and health educator, she's guided thousands of people in their transition from pregnancy to parenthood. And she also works to educate on pleasure, relationships, and vulnerability. In today's 30-minute class with Erica, she's going to talk about all things self-love, body literacy, compassionate connection with oneself, and sex positivity. And I have been reading about this amazing woman for years, and I finally met her at a recent In Goop Health, and she was so cool. She was so smart. She was so personable, and I'm just so proud to be introducing her right now. She does so much for women, and she does so much for people and the planet. So I feel so fortunate that she's joining us, and please help me in welcoming Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Chidi, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of LOOM. We're a well-being brand that focuses on empowering women around sexual and reproductive health. And I'm really excited to be here with you today to talk about self-love. Hopefully this is going to be a short but sweet few minutes together, just going over ways to cultivate more self-acceptance, to cultivate more body literacy, to cultivate more comfort in your body. I'm going to go through 4 different sections. So I want to talk about the pandemic for a little bit. Then I'm going to talk about the menstrual cycle. Then I'm going to talk about masturbation. And finally, we're going to explore routine as ritual. So kicking off with the pandemic, we are in an incredibly difficult time. Most of us have done the best that we can around adjusting, whether it's working from home or figuring out how to take care of yourself or manage time alone if you're quarantining alone, or manage time with your partner or your children. And I've spoken about this a lot, but we really are in a concentrated grief period. And if you haven't had real connection or real experience around grief, I think it's really important to realize that when you're grieving, it's cyclical and it's on a continuum. And so one way to look at it is that you might have moments where you feel really good and really focused and really organized and vigilant, maybe in a positive sense. And then that'll be a couple of days, and then you'll have a really tough couple of days where you feel really depressed, maybe can't get out of bed, feeling disconnected from people that you're really close to, that you're living with. And just knowing that grief definitely is the canopy in which we are existing right now, along with this notion of collective trauma, which I've also talked about in the sense that if prior to the pandemic you weren't someone that identified with trauma, we definitely all now have experience with it. And so trauma is a very complex experience that is a byproduct of a very uncomfortable or tragic, sudden or long-term exposure to something that really doesn't feel good and doesn't land in your system, doesn't feel psychologically comfortable. And we are all very much so experiencing that. So the reason why I wanted to talk about grief and trauma really briefly is because it really impacts our ability to want to contact our body, and it really impacts our ability to want to cultivate self-love. It can be very hard to look for joy, and even when you find it, comfortably access it without guilt, without discomfort. And so I think naming the bigger, more challenging, difficult components at play is one step towards self-permission to embrace whatever joy you can find and to find your way back to your body. And another thing probably to bring in, just thinking about trauma for a moment again, is that trauma is stored in the body. The body is the place where you will continue to remember and repeat a lot of the uncomfortable feelings that you've experienced. And so again, the connection with the body, the clearing of the body, somatic, which is another term that we use to describe the body, somatic practices are going to be a very important part of your healing when you decide or begin that healing process. So that's kind of what I want to just ground with, so that everything I'm talking about is going to really link back to our current time. Because in my opinion, the canopy of the pandemic is really a hard reset button. We're not going to go back to the way things were, and we're actually going forward into a stretched timeline where the constraints we're under right now will probably remain and might change here and there, but essentially I think the sooner we start to acclimate to where we are right now and give ourselves permission to stop longing for the past and not necessarily preparing for the future, but just being present with what is happening right now, I think again is an opportunity to cultivate self-love and to cultivate presence and to regulate your nervous system. So speaking of nervous system, let's talk about the menstrual cycle. Now, this is definitely my thing. I definitely have a soapbox and love talking about periods. And the way I like to explore the menstrual cycle is not in the typical way. I really like to give women, and also allies of women, people that have those parts, a different way of understanding how that cycle works in their body. So typically most people feel that when I mention the word menstrual cycle, they only think about their period, the time that they're bleeding. Your menstrual cycle is actually bleed to bleed and everything that happens in between. So an introduction to the 4 phases, I think, is the best place to start. So when you're bleeding or on your period, you are menstruating, you are in your menstruation phase. And the menstruation phase, just in terms of energy, in terms of expectation, in terms of output, I think it's really important to see the time when you're bleeding as a time to go in, a time to kind of pull back a little bit and just kind of notice what your body is doing, kind of bring your awareness even to your abdomen and notice like the contractions that are taking place. And that's actually the term for what's happening in your uterus when you're having your period. Although many of us may have had discomfort when we're bleeding and have described them as cramps, cramps means that there is pain present. If you're someone who has bled most of their life without much pain, you're having contractions. And I think that's really important to utilize the right words and to connect the right energy, whether it's negative, positive, or neutral, because I think the word contractions typically isn't used in our culture unless we're talking about labor or pregnancy, which I think is a mistake because it really separates this continuum of learning, right? So you're having contractions when you're having your period and your uterus is pushing out your endometrium lining. And in terms of energy, like I said, it's a time of going in, it's a time of restoration, it's a time of softening and observation, right? And for most people, that's about, 2 to 7 days of the month. Now, after you're done bleeding, you move into the follicular phase. And the follicular phase, to me, I like to say it's like the get up and go time of the month, okay? And the reason for that is because there's two hormones that are really starting to pick up in the system and kind of give you that extra boost. And those two hormones, namely, are estradiol, which is a specific type of estrogen, and testosterone. And so for me, when I think about the follicular phase, that's gonna be the time of the month where I'm like, I'm going to maybe push myself a little bit harder with exercise. I might try and cook for myself, in a more focused way during that period of time. Especially given the context of the time that we're in right now, it might be where I can schedule more meetings. I could do more Zoom calls that day. And again, if you are living with other people or you're a parent, it's just, if you're setting out your homeschooling schedule for your children or their digital learning experience, your follicular phase is going to be when you can take on more intense projects. So that's really something to kind of negotiate and think about. And the follicular phase is anywhere from about 10 to 12 days of the month, again, directly after you are done with menstruation or your period. Now, 1 to 3 days of the month, you move into your ovulatory phase, which comes directly after the follicular phase. Now, the thing about the ovulatory phase is I like to think of it as kind of the whip that comes right after the follicular phase. It's like the crescendo, right? It's when you really get that big surge of estradiol and testosterone, and it's when your ovary releases an egg. Now, in magazines of the past 10, 15 years, Cosmo, whatever the case, typically the ovulation phase is described as like a chance to take a Zumba class or have more sex. And that is true. You will probably feel more energetic, and you probably also will feel more interested in having sex with yourself or sex with your partner. That said, it also is just a time of higher communication. And so I think, again, when it comes to thinking about your schedule, when it comes to thinking about your flow, your routine, the ovulatory phase is a time to potentially push yourself a little further maybe than you would. And again, in this time that we're in, knowing where you can expect a little bit more from yourself and then also expect a little less from yourself is really important. And here's the thing, what we are navigating as women when it comes to our menstrual cycle is this really fantastic dynamism, okay? That means we are not just running on the same fuel all month. And what's interesting about that is living in the society that we have lived in pre-pandemic, we live in a patriarchy where everything is designed around the male experience, and men are able to exist in a much more linear hormonal state, meaning that they're not going to have as much variability. They don't have a follicular phase and an ovulatory phase. And so, the introduction here is that you need to be thinking about, okay, when am I up and when am I down? And really working your life to kind of adapt to that. And I think, this kind of sheltering in place quarantine experience is an opportunity to kind of deepen that. And so I've just described the menstrual phase, we've talked, or menstruation phase, went into the follicular phase, talked about the ovulation phase. Now, when the ovulation phase is over, what happens is that estradiol and testosterone tanks, really goes down. And what happens is we start to wait for your body to produce another hormone called progesterone. And progesterone, I like to describe it as our counterculture hormone, because progesterone is all about slowing down. It's all about taking it a little bit more easy. Progesterone actually slows down your digestive tract, so it makes you digest food a lot slower. And so the phase that I'm referring to after the ovulatory phase, where we're waiting for this progesterone and we're feeling all these slowdown effects, is called the luteal phase, or the luteal phase, depending on where you are in the world. And the thing about the luteal phase that I have really been trying to push forward is that it is a post-ovulatory container where really what's going to work in that period of time is not the same as what was working for you pre-ovulatory. So all that high energy, that high octane, that push dips after you ovulate. And it's really about kind of reversing a lot of the expectations. So if you were working out a lot pre-ovulatory, post-ovulatory in your luteal phase, you might not work out that week. You might want to take a nap. And literally progesterone makes you sleepy. And so a nap really might be just what you need. And so, you know, and again, like I explained, progesterone slows down your digestive system. So like the burger or the lamb stew or whatever kind of more indulgent, heavier food that did really great in your system 2 weeks prior, maybe won't feel as good in your luteal phase. So it's really all about this kind of self-observation and this sense of permission to notice the differential between your system pre-ovulatory and post-ovulatory. Now, the luteal phase is about 10 to 12 days of the month, and the ovulatory phase is around 1 to 3. So those 4 phases, when you connect them all, that is a core kind of underpinning of the female reproductive experience. Now, the thing I like to really drive home about those 4 phases and just the menstrual cycle in general is that it really is like cognitive behavioral therapy, but for your period or for your menstrual cycle. The idea with CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, is that when you understand your thoughts, you can change how you feel. So the idea is when you understand your cycle and you understand these phases, you can change how you feel about them. And so instead of saying I'm PMSing, consider saying I'm luteal. I'm in my luteal phase. I'm really tired. I'm really sleepy. I guess progesterone is really working right now. Or, you know, gosh, I'm feeling really bloated. Again, those are all symptoms of that phase. And I think using words like the luteal phase and pushing away from terminology like PMS, which has a lot more of a negative connotation, is again another opportunity to be more compassionate and to be more loving to yourself. So I think that really is something that I'm hopeful that you'll be able to kind of cultivate into your experience and into your kind of self-love protocol. And then the last thing I'll say in relationship to the menstrual cycle is the idea of cycle curiosity. So I think, again, given the context of the time that we're in, there is a really awesome opportunity to try out different menstrual products, whether that's a menstrual cup or reusable pads or wearable or reusable underwear or new tampons. There's just room. There's room and there's time to negotiate the body in a different way. And so I really encourage you to do that and to see what comes of it and see what new kind of routines you can kind of put in for yourself around your menstrual cycle. So let's talk about masturbation. Now, I think it's so important to find a place of comfort with masturbation. And I think, again, with the time that we're in right now, I know that there's been probably more push around self-pleasure, masturbation, explore your body, but we have to give space and credence to the idea of grief and trauma. And grief and trauma doesn't necessarily create a lot of space in your body to feel comfortable with accessing it. So always acknowledge that piece. So there's no right amount or wrong amount of masturbation or pleasure that you should be experiencing now. It's all about being in constant negotiation with it and knowing that if you don't feel like masturbating right now, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's really the progress or the support for yourself is just having that internal dialogue. What's happening there? Do you want to? Do you not want to? That is soft. That is connection. That is spaciousness. And then at the same time, when it comes to thinking about masturbation, when you're doing it or wanting to do it, really thinking about, okay, what's coming up for me? Am I actually horny or aroused, or am I sad? Am I hungry? Am I terrified? None of those things are wrong. But what's key is that you are thinking about them. Because if we can start to create connection between action and thought, that is a way to cultivate self-love. It's just creating this kind of gentle accountability in your system around why you do the things that you do. And especially having more time to ourselves right now, I think that type of, gentle negotiation can be really powerful. Now, in terms of just approaching masturbation, I think there's so many different ways that you can go, but what I want to kind of lean into is just the simplest approach to your vulva. Because again, like I said, right now, for some, masturbation really might not be on the table. It just might not be something that you feel like doing, but I think non-sexual, comforting, loving touch can be something that could be on the table. And I really see that kind of as vulva appreciation. And what I would suggest, if it's been a long time since you've touched your body, or it's been a long time since someone has touched you, is to just take your hand, place it over your vulva, and just feel that sensation. Just feel what it feels like to have the pressure, the warmth, the sensation, okay? And really, with your palm, just locate your inner lips, your outer lips, your vaginal opening, your urethral opening, and even just for a minute to 3 minutes. And you can do that in bed. You can do that, after you wipe yourself after peeing. You can do it when you're in the bathtub. And again, it is not something that needs to have a desired result. It's just about developing safety and just relocating yourself in space, which I think is, again, a very gentle, a very compassionate, loving thing that you can do that is not high intensity, okay? Now, the other thing to think about is porn. And I think porn also, same kind of approach. When you're watching it, understand what's bringing you there. Again, are you hungry? Are you tired? Are you sad? Are you actually horny? Again, it's just the conversation. It's just the conversation that you need to have with yourself, that I would encourage you to have with yourself. And also, I think as women, we've had such little modeling of pleasure. We haven't gotten to see other women masturbate. We haven't gotten that permission. And so I think there can be a high value component to porn, especially porn that's POV, or porn of watching another woman masturbate to orgasm, can give you a sense of permission to allow yourself. So I think that's something else to kind of consider just within the porn component, just understanding where you're coming from, why you're using it, knowing that none of the reasons are wrong, but again, you're just negotiating this conversation. And then the last two things I'll talk about in terms of masturbation are lube and toys. So very simply put, I consider lube to be liberation, primarily because when our bodies are very stressed, which they were pre-pandemic, but they definitely are now, it can be very hard to have your body respond with arousal. So arousal is your nipples getting hard. Arousal is moisture in your vagina. Your body might take a little minute to catch up to like where you are cognitively wanting to be. And so lubricant can help speed that up and help your body meet your mind and help you to move forward. So That's just something to think about. Lube does not mean something is wrong. It is a loving, compassionate, curious, and supportive choice to utilize lube. And then toys. Personally, I'm a hands person. So, I think building a relationship with a toy or purchasing a toy is not something you need to rush into because now you're trying to develop a masturbation practice or you're trying to dive into it. Your hands are a really great place to start. But if you are wanting to explore toys, I think really utilizing something with low vibration can be a great way to start in order to kind of still keep you able to easily acclimate to that non-vibration touch. And then I think also something that can be helpful that I don't think a lot of people talk about is how great glass toys are. I think glass is really interesting for so many reasons. Firstly, you can heat it up, you can cool it down, you can have temperature play. And also, as you become more aroused, the actual feeling of glass in the body can feel actually pretty anchoring and pretty supportive. And so again, so much more to unpack here, but just as a tiny little bite-sized approach, I think these are things that you can explore. That vulva appreciation, really checking in around what is drawing you towards masturbation or maybe what is pulling you away from it. And just, again, being in that compassionate conversation with yourself. And then lastly, let's talk about routine as ritual. So I'm going to start off with talking about peeing and pooing. Now, I know that is maybe not exactly where your brain goes when you think about self-love, but here's the thing. You pee and poo probably every day, at least definitely pee. We'd love to see pooping every day too, but those things are happening. And what I've done for myself and kind of what I've realized is like when I'm sitting on the toilet and I'm peeing, that is an opportunity for me to take a couple of deep breaths. That's an opportunity for me to connect with this release of my pelvic floor. That's an opportunity for me to be like, jump into your body for a second, be here. And so I really want to just throw out that invitation. Same thing for pooping. When you are having a bowel movement, like feel what's going on in your system. Again, it's an opportunity to go in because peeing and pooping are just, routine function in the body. We have learned to not listen to it until something's wrong. If you've ever had a UTI or you're constipated, then you really focus on those two events in this very kind of harsh, intense way, wishing the pain was not there or wishing you could have, an elimination, right? But what about when your body's just working really well? Like, what about cultivating love and compassion and gratitude for, wow, my body's just doing these things and I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to be with that. And I'm going to just be in a moment of, okay, containment. Okay, thank you, body. So again, not a traditional approach, but I do feel like the routine of elimination within the system is an opportunity for pause and an opportunity for gratitude and an opportunity for self-love that is available to everyone. And oftentimes I think we take our breath and our body functions for granted. And I think pulling that in can be really helpful, especially thinking again back to the piece around masturbation and the fact that masturbation, to get there, you need to really cultivate more non-sexual touch and non-sexual connection in the body, which can happen while you're sitting on the toilet. Now, the other two things that I'm such a big fan of are baths. I sometimes take 2 baths a day. She's a bath lady. I gotta have it. And the bathtub is a beautiful place to connect with your body. And also, it's a place of forced relaxation, which is one of the reasons why I love it. When I get into the bath, I can't really grip and do the things that I typically do when I'm outside in the world. And so really trying to negotiate with yourself to create more bath time, I think is a great way to develop self-love. And also, it's a great way to soothe the body. And there's so many ways that you can approach taking a bath. I think one of the things I would probably recommend would be to try and do it with the lights off. And if that feels kind of jarring, kind of work your way towards darkness over time. I think the darkness and the water can really help to circulate and release oxytocin in the system and help have a really positive psychological, mental relaxation response, along with just what happens to your muscles when they feel heat on them, so they can release and relax. I'm a big fan of magnesium in the bath because that also helps with the relaxation of the muscles. And if you're not a person who likes to take baths, you're like, oh, I feel weird when I take them, or like I can't calm my mind, it's okay to have a bath companion. That can be a book, that can be a podcast, that can be TV. I know I definitely have propped up my iPad and watched RuPaul's Drag Race sitting in the bath. It doesn't have to be this overly sanctimonious process. It can be kind of punctured with other things that make you feel good. But I think the idea is that physical release that can come through taking a bath. And then the next thing that I think can be super helpful for, again, just the connection in your body would be brushing, dry brushing, which can happen before a bath. It can happen before a shower, but really taking a brush all around your body, starting at the legs and moving up towards the chest, is a way, again, to touch and contact your body in this non-sexual way that develops a sense of, firstly, just awareness of your body in space, which is really, I think, in a lot of ways, just the baseline desire. It's just, can I find my body? Like, is she here? And how can you really create ritual around that every day? And again, dry brushing is also great for circulation, and it's great for kind of opening up the pores and some of these kind of more obvious things. But I do think energetically, emotionally, it is a chance to just sweep and touch the system, which I think is so valuable as we're kind of building all these pieces to create this idea of self-love. And I think the last thing that I'll add to that is the idea of oils and oiling the body and self-massage. That for me, I think, is a practice I learned really early on in life. My mother taught me that when I was a little girl, how to put oil on my body. And again, I need to put oil on my body because my body gets really dry and I do not want to be ashy. That's definitely a black person thing. We are always avoiding the ash. But when I put oil on my body, I can tap in. I can feel my pulse. I can be in here. And I think we are all, most of the time, running from being in here. And I think sometimes when we're told to sit and meditate or to journal or, do some of these more kinesthetic things that don't necessarily pull you back into your body, there are simple ways that don't have to be kind of overly directive, but that happen every day that can allow you to just be in your system. And so if you're someone who typically gets out of the shower and it's just like, I'm out, or gets out of the bath and you just slap it on and you keep moving, let me invite you, or let me encourage you to, the next time that you're putting on your oils or you're putting on your lotion, go slow. Go slow. If anything, gently dry yourself off, go sit on your bed and really take your hands over your body. It's a really wonderful practice to do. And also, I think, and this is a side note, but I think if you have children, little ones, because I remember learning this practice when I was maybe, 4, 5, 6, somewhere there, watching my mom put oil on her body made me want to do it to myself, and she would teach me. And so I think as you're learning to slow down and self-regulate and take care of your body and be in your system, that's something that can be modeled by your child. And I think that is one of the most beautiful, kind of simple ways to educate without having to be prescriptive about it. So those are the things. I think, and I hope that everything I've talked about today feels supportive, provides some structure in a time where it can be hard to self-create that. And I really think that this is a time of co-creation. It's a time of softening. It's a time for action. And in order to be able to be in action, you also have to be able to take care of yourself. Because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't be in the marathon. And that's what we're in right now. This is a marathon. It's a marathon to fight the pandemic. It's a marathon to fight racism. It's a marathon to support and to uplift and to protect Black lives. And if this 30 minutes that we're having together right now of giving yourself some love or exploring how to do that allows you to then take the next step to do the right thing and to be present for the action that's needed, then that's a good thing. And so thank you so much for watching, and you can find me on Instagram at Erica Chidi, and you can find Loom at Loom HQ on Instagram as well. And so grateful for the time, and stay gentle, stay curious, take care of yourself, and fight for a better world.